Well, shares of cannabis company Tilray popping in the session, now up roughly 12% on the back of its third quarter results. Tilray posted revenue of $152 million in the quarter, a 23% jump year on year, with that increase driven by strong sales in cannabis and its alcohol business. Let's bring in the CEO and chairman of Tilray Brands, Irwin Simon, joining us today. And Irwin, this is a really interesting quarter because it points to that diversification you've really been touting for the company. Cannabis revenue up 32%, but alcohol seeing a 64% growth. Talk to me about what this says about the direction, this evolution of the company moving away strictly from cannabis.
So I think, moving away from cannabis, and I don't think we're moving at all away from cannabis. I think the big thing is upon legalization, the adjacencies, what our spirits and beer business would have with cannabis in the U.S. As we sit back and wait for legalization, to happen in the U.S., Akiko, it's building out our spirits and our beverage business here. And again, we see tremendous consumer demand for spirits and beverage, but I also come back and think one day with infused bourbons or tequilas with THC or infused beers, there's going to be tremendous demand there, and we'll be ready for it.
Irwin, it's Brian Chung here. Great to have you on the program. So kind of in that vein, you have a lot of partnerships with some of these products. I know that you just recently announced a partnership with Whole Foods to get some hemp products in the stores there. In the United States markets, at least, how are you kind of envisioning the rollout of possible federal legalization? We know that that has not necessarily come to fruition as some had hoped for in November of 2020, but it seems like you're still trying to position yourself for someday that happening, at which case, what do you just take those products and turn the hemp into THC?
So, hi, Brian. And I think, what it shows is this here, it being, the former founder, the founder of Hain Celestial, which was Whole Foods' biggest supplier of foods. It shows how they've moved into, the evolution of foods that are infused with hemp and how consumers want hemp either for higher protein, keto diets, et cetera. And I think that's important that, consumer demands and how we're looking at cannabis in so many different ways. You can use it as adult use it as medical, use it as part of drinks. And stepping back, a bill just passed in the legislature, to approve cannabis federally from a legal standpoint. It still has to go through the Senate. By 2023, by 2030, it's $100 billion business out there. And, even if it didn't go legal, it's still a good sized business. So consumers want cannabis legalized. 63% want it federally, 90% want it medical. So we need to be positioned for it when that happens. I've talked about a $4 billion plan. And to get to that $4 billion plan, U.S. has to be a big part of it. And I need, $2 to $3 billion of sales here in the U.S. So I just can't sit back and wait for it to happen. And how do we make that happen? Well, we got to own consumer products good companies, because what I'm looking to build here is a consumer products good company that has product categories that upon legalization, you can infuse them with THC or CBD. Today, we own notes within MedMan, which we own about 25%. Upon legalization, ultimately, would we look to buy 100% of MedMan, or the opportunity is to buy other MSOs in the U.S. So we need to be ready. And the other big thing, Brian, is this here. As one of the largest cannabis, growers and providers in Canada today, and one of the largest in Europe, with our expertise, we'll be ready for the U.S.
Let's talk more about that revenue target you just alluded to, $4 billion by the end of fiscal 2024. You've highlighted a number of products you're looking at, but what does the portfolio look like when you hit that target? How much of this is going to be about cannabis? How much of it is about what you've described as adjacencies? What do you see?
So great question. I wish I could look into a crystal ball and said, hey, July 30th, which is my birthday, that cannabis would be legalized here, but I can't, really do that. But I think the big thing is we know that there's $100 billion market here in the U.S. and we know, ultimately what we can get share of. We also know today we grow about 265,000 kilos in Canada. If free trade was allowed, we would have plenty of product to ship into the US. And today we have a good head start in the spirits business and the beer business, which are adjacencies. So there's three businesses right there. There's our alcohol business, there would be our infused drinks business, and then we would have the distribution through distributors to go ahead and be able to sell that. Today we sell our Riff beer, our Good Supply beer, our Broken Coast brands, which are cannabis brands in Canada, and we sell them in our beverage business in the US. So we're circling it. We're being, limited to what we can do because of legalization, but we do have aspirations and a plan of how to get to $4 billion. The thing is too, Brian and Akiko, we're going to have to pull different levers if it doesn't happen. But we have the balance sheet, we have the knowledge, we have the infrastructure, we have the people to get to that $4 billion if legalization does happen.
So, Irwin, am I kind of reading it right that you'd be kind of leaning on M&A to maybe get some of these state, for example, producers and distributors that have already kind of built up infrastructure in the absence of legal federalization, to buy them up and kind of get into those markets? You talked about MedMen. Are there other types of approaches that you would have in terms of just buying up companies that have already maybe had a footing in some states?
Absolutely. M&A is a big part of this here. Organic growth is a big part of it. What I've said in Canada, to get to that $1 billion, it would be growing to a 14 or 15% market share ourselves. And we would need about $200 to $300 million in M&A and, maybe $100 million in other consumer products goods. In the US, to get to $500 million in consumer products, we need about $250 million. And to get to that, $1.5 billion in cannabis, it would be buying other MSOs. We cannot own today and don't own any cannabis companies in the US today because it's not federally legal. We trade on the NASDAQ, on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So that's not part of our portfolio. So yeah, it would have to be M&A. And there's a lot of great companies out there, multi-state operators, and taking our expertise on a global basis, our knowledge, and with the combination, I think would be some great acquisitions.
We'll be continuing to watch the progress there. Irwin Simon, Chairman and CEO with Tilray Brands. Great to talk to you today. Appreciate the time.